7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Champions! Wrexham are promoted. They have their storybook ending.
You can walk through the fire. You can walk through the fire. When it's down to the wire. You can walk through the fire.
Ho, 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 ho. Merry Christmas, everybody. Welcome to the Wrexham Texan, or should I say, howdy, y'all. Welcome to the Wrexham Texan. My name is Jake Green. Thank you so much for joining me today, even though my costume is ridiculous. The beard is going down too far, and it's hard for me to talk. Today is an interview with my brother, Matt Green, who is obsessed with football. He loves it. His team is West Ham. It's been West Ham for a very long time now. And today we're going to talk about the FA Cup and how he thinks it could be improved. He thinks it could be turned into more of an event. I guess I'm not going to talk for him right now. He's going to explain it here in a little bit. But yeah, I think he has some great ideas. He's been following football for a very long time. He plays Football Manager like a crazy amount. I try to pick up Football Manager and play it, but it is so detailed and takes so much time and energy and effort that it's actually something that I just can't do at the moment when I have so many things going on. So hopefully I can get into Football Manager at some point. But man, he and my best friend back in Dallas, they play it regularly, religiously. It's they're fanatics. They're fanatics about it. So it is the month of December right now, clearly. And all these episodes are pre-recorded, so I'm not doing any reactions to games, matches, no news with Wrexham at the moment. You can find all of that stuff over on Instagram and Twitter for the month of December. So this is a pre-recorded episode, so please drop a like on the video, share it with your friends, spread it around. You can also go follow me on Twitter and Instagram, WXM Texan, Wrexham Texan. And you can get red hot takes and Texan of the match and quote of the day, tweet of the day, X of the day, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, head on over there and follow me over there. And without further ado, my brother, Matt Green. Here we go. Matt Green, welcome to the show. Thanks for being the first in-person guest for the Wrexham Texan.
In the van. It's what I always dreamed of.
Yeah, everyone always dreams of doing a podcast in a van that is incomplete and needs some more work. You know?
It's nice.
Well, all right. So it is December. Once this podcast comes out, this will be part of my December series because I'm not going to be recording any podcasts in December, only releasing some that are pre-recorded. So today we're going to talk about a few things. One is how you got into football to begin with. 2 is your love for West Ham. And 3 is your idea for revamping the FA Cup, which you're going to get a lot of hate for. And I'm going to get a lot of hate for it because people don't like Americans commenting on football.
And I get it. It would, we just watched Michigan, Ohio State play. It's like if a bunch of Brits came over here and be like, here's how you fix Michigan, Ohio State. It's like,
yeah, but
I get it.
To be fair, though, there are a million ways to fix the college football championship.
For sure. There's always ways to fix things, but I would understand from their perspective. I'm just throwing out ideas. We'll see if some of them stick,
Okay. Well, first, not every American gets into football. And like most Americans play soccer, football, whatever, growing up, but it's not something that sticks with us as we continue to get older. So what was your entrance into either football or the Premier League?
Yeah, first of all, football. is the best sport to play when you're young. It teaches you spacing and teamwork and everything like that, going to where the ball is going to be, not where the ball is. So just if you have kids out there, football, soccer is the best sport to play when they're young. Otherwise, I got into football via international soccer, the World Cup.
Yeah.
I remember the 2002 World Cup. I was staying at my friend Bear Murkison's house, and the game, we were playing Mexico in the knockouts. I think the game was at 3:30 in the morning, 4:30 in the morning, and I got up for it and watched it. No one else in the house, giant house. And I got up and watched it by myself, and we won 2-0, as we do. And that was the day where I was like, I like this sport a lot, but it was mostly just based around international, because when you're in the US, it's hard to find a team.
Yeah.
And then as the years went on, 2006, again, watched the World Cup. US didn't do so hot. And then it was really the 2010 World Cup that I watched. That was the Landon Donovan Algeria game. And then I was like, I got to find a team because I love this game. Let's watch it year round. And a few years earlier, I was flipping around on the channels once, and I saw West Ham playing Chelsea, and it was a Paolo Di Canio game. Paolo Di Canio, for those who don't know, West Ham legend. Just Google his famous scissor kicky thing. Just Google that. Paolo Di Canio scissor kicky thing. And it was that game that I was watching. It's a legendary goal now. I was like, that was pretty cool. And so when I needed a team later, I was like, let's look into West Ham. Like, I remember them from this game. I didn't want one of the big teams, Chelsea, Arsenal, Man U, because that's lame. That's like someone coming over here and, cheering for the Yankees.
Or the Cowboys.
Chiefs. Well, yeah, or the Cowboys, although they stink. So, yeah.
But it is the team that all international fans seem to like.
Exactly. And it's the team that has like the most support in other cities in America other than Dallas.
Yeah.
So I wanted a different kind of team. West Ham was kind of up and down. And I watched the movie Green Street Hooligans. And I was like, this is awesome. Like, what a great movie. Charlie Hunnam's the best. And so then I was like, I really got to like deep dive into this team now. And so I did. Loved it. Just the song. I'm sure you've talked about Texas A&M on the show
so many times.
And just the heartbreak. And so when I heard the words of Blowing Bubbles, Fortune's always hiding, I've looked everywhere. I was like, this is my team. Like, who else could it be? Similar, colors, like almost a maroon.
Oh yeah,
it's a claret. And so I was like, all right, this is my team. And then 2011 season, that's kind of when I started diving in, and that is when they got relegated to the championship, and they had the championship final in 2012. And I was like, this is a perfect time to get going on this team when they're relegated, because then you can start, not from the bottom like Wrexham, but like, this is perfect. Let's do it. Watch the playoff final that year against Blackpool. Late goal from Ricardo Vazte. I watched that goal like once a week. I remember watching it, but watching it back now with the broadcast and everything, Vazte! It's so good. And got promoted. And the next couple of years, I was kind of in and out because I was finishing college and stuff. And then after that, I watched 90% of West Ham games.
There we go. Yeah, I've talked many times about the A&M, just Texas A&M in general, football, just being that similar to how you did with West Ham and the song and how they are never really quite win, but always being like just on the cusp. I always felt like that when I saw Welcome to Wrexham. Was like Wrexham seems to always be okay and always in contention, even if they're not up in the Premier League. They're always in contention in the National League. And just reminding me of Texas A&M, and I immediately felt their pain. But
something about pain that just kind of you identify with other people's pain. We call it, if Jake hasn't mentioned on the show, we call it battered Aggie syndrome, where you essentially, you've just lost so many times that when you lose, now you're just like, that's the way it goes.
Yep. I mean, there's generally one game a year where I throw a fit and throw something against a wall, and that's when A&M is knocked out of playoff contention. That happened this year already. Today we lost to LSU, and I just sat there silently fuming on the couch while we all watched the Ohio State Michigan game.
What was it? LSU had lost 18 straight games, down by 10 in the second half, and
then we
were
let
up
them
by
score
10 in the
30.
second half.
Yeah, we let them score 32 points in the second half to destroy us. So that was, I mean, A&M is just heartbreak. But today was, I know this is like 3 weeks later, but this is the day we beat Morecambe. Wrexham beat Morecambe 6-0. So it was a good morning. It was a good start to the day, at least. Let's talk about West Ham's current
run of form.
Yeah, current run of form. So let's see. Last game y'all won was, what is it? 2-1?
Yeah, we beat Burnley this morning. Thomas Souček, late winner, 90+1. Dreadful about 75 minutes, and then team picked it up at the end. 2 subs, Ben Rama and Mubama came in and really turned that game around, got an own goal, and then Souček with the late winner. Second consecutive game with the late winner for Souček. So yeah, coming off the international break, we needed that one. We were sputtering a bit before, and it was not a pretty game, but wins are wins.
You weren't sputtering too hard though. Like you only lost one.
It was more. It was more. The team looked like they were running out of ideas creatively, and
gotcha.
There were just some issues in the team. A couple injuries. Michael Antonio looks like he's going to be out a while. Jared Bowen are easily our best player right now.
Gotcha.
Best attacker anyway. Score.
You had lost quite a few in October.
Yeah, lost a Europa League game to Olympiacos, which was not great.
Tied with Newcastle, got smashed by Villa.
Yeah, that
got
game
beat
was
by
rough.
Olympiacos.
Yep.
I've never even heard of that team.
That's a Greek team.
Yeah,
it was,
I can tell.
Europa League. Yeah.
Okay. But the table, it's not going horribly for y'all. You're mid-table.
Yeah. No, it's
yeah. As of this recording, you're number 9.
It's very controversial with David Moyes because it's our manager. People want him out. He's had a lot of success here, though, and the people that want him out, it feels like maybe they weren't here before, where we were, the Sam Allardyce days where we were fine.
Mm-hmm.
Days where we were just scraping to avoid relegation. Now, last year we win the Europa Conference League. We're in the Europa League. The year before that, we get to the semifinals of the Europa League. Jared Bowen hits the post in the 92nd minute to tie and go to extra time against Frankfurt. We're in the Europa League final with a shot at Champions League. And now 2 years later, after winning Europa Conference League, everybody's like, get Moyes out. Get him out. It's like, I understand it because
I mean, you did almost get relegated last year.
2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Yeah. Well, last year for a while. At the end, it was pretty safe.
Okay.
But it was maybe that's 3 years ago now that we almost got relegated. Last year it was close for a while, but in the end it was relatively
gotcha.
Safe. And so I understand kind of wanting. We have too many games where we don't. Seems like we don't have a plan offensively, attacking wise, but. West Ham having this amount of success would have been unfathomable 15 years ago. Right. And for people to call him, wanting him out, it's wild to me because if somebody brought this kind of success to A&M, there'd be a statue already.
Right.
If it's just wild.
Yeah.
The British mindset is strange in this regard because in America, we think we fire coaches too quickly. It's much wilder in England,
yes,
in terms of managers.
And I've addressed that repeatedly on this show because last week we got smoked by Accrington Stanley, who's not bad. They're in the top 7. And we had people calling for Parkey to get fired. And it's like, he just brought us up. He just got us promoted. We're in promotion run for next season. And one game goes wrong and they already want him axed.
So,
it's crazy.
One of our good buddies, Sam, and I have discussed this at length about there's something about the Brits, which I actually really appreciate, where it's often more about your style of soccer and how beautiful the soccer is that you play, hence the beautiful game, versus results. I think there is a good chunk of British people that would much rather their team get relegated but play pretty soccer, where you're passing it about, good ball movement, controlling the ball, pushing forward, and they'd be happy to get relegated, kind of stay in the championship level if they're playing that way. I could be wrong about that, but that's what I've kind of gathered of my years of being on Twitter and other internet spaces. Whereas I think in America, if you won every American football game 3-2, the fan base, again, you're getting a statue. If you win every game, it doesn't matter how you win that game, you're a legend. And I think in England, it's not that way. And I haven't been able to put my finger on why it's that way, but I do kind of appreciate that, where it's like, I'd actually rather pay my money to go to the game and watch an entertaining product and maybe lose a bit more. Whereas in America, it's just all about the results. I don't know. This is kind of just a bit of a theory Sam and I have that we've been investigating.
I mean, that's interesting. Like, I don't know. I was never, our mom hates teams that play what she calls trash basketball.
Yeah.
And like, even if they're really good, like Xavier half the time,
Yeah.
she hates them because of how they play.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't know any Xavier fans. So like, are there any? I don't know.
There's a few out there.
But like, I understand wanting it to look pure and like good sport.
Yeah.
So I get that motivation, but like, if you're winning, who gives a crap?
Yeah.
Like that's crazy to me. And so, yeah, I mean, asking for people to get cut, people to get fired after like one or two mistakes is idiotic, in my opinion.
It's silly for sure, but I get it only from the perspective of relegation exists, where in America it doesn't. So if you're really falling down the table, which obviously Wrexham was not after one loss to Accrington, that perspective, yeah, you might need a little bit of a shorter leash on relegation potential, teams like in England. So I get it from that perspective. If a team is really, really struggling, it might be a good idea to have that short leash. But yeah, Parky, 1 year at Rex, 2 years at Wrexham, second year they get promoted, first year devastating playoff loss.
Yeah.
And now they're top 6?
They're second.
They're second now?
Yeah.
After today? Because all those
after
losses?
today, they're second in the league.
But even let's assume they had lost today and they're still sitting like top half.
Yeah, they'd be seventh.
It's your first year in League Two and you're top half. You're calling for the manager to be saying that's silly.
It's absolutely silly.
Yeah, I know. I'm sure it's a small minority, but nonetheless.
So just for anybody who's watching this or listening to this, we are in the middle of nowhere, Mississippi. The internet here is horrendous. I'm trying to get pages to load, and they're just not loading. So we're not going to have a lot of things for you to look at besides me and Matt's faces. So I apologize. But the reason you wanted to come on the show is to talk about the FA Cup. And we, as Wrexham fans, love the FA Cup because over the years we've been known for giant killings, is what we call it.
Giant killings.
And one of our commentators last week or a couple weeks ago, just out of nowhere, just said, "I love giant killing," and just that was it. That was the whole line. It was nothing else. And last year we took Sheffield, who's now in the Premier League, but apparently sucks. Right? They're not doing well. Yeah. We took them to a replay.
Yeah,
and nearly came out.
The replay was crazy.
The replay was a crazy game.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I love the FA Cup. I've mentioned this many times. Just any tournament style, any tournament style sport is like my favorite thing on earth. So, first of all, what are your thoughts on the FA Cup, how it is right now?
I absolutely love the FA Cup, the tradition of it, the grandeur of it. It just, as we get kind of more and more international soccer where, the Super League tried to form a couple years ago, we've got Champions League, Europa League, Conference League, all those things are huge. You've got, now they're expanding the Club World Cup to 32 teams every December. It just seems like these cups, these, domestic cups are losing a bit of
the interest of the fans. You get, sometimes half-empty stadiums at these games, especially for the bigger teams, who are in Europe and things like that, which is sad because I genuinely love the FA Cup and I want the best for it. And that's why I have these suggestions. It's not, like, this is lame. I love the FA Cup. And I think my idea would solve a lot of the issues of the FA Cup, make it like a proper event for about 3 weeks. And then you still have the final at the end of the season, last day of the season at Wembley. So that's that's going to be down the road. But that's just to preface. Yeah, I just wanted to say that at the start so people didn't know. But that should be the way the English soccer season ends, is the FA Cup at Wembley, and that's how it would be. So but I love the FA Cup. Any suggestion I have, I'm happy to hear constructive compliments about it. I love the FA Cup.
All right. So what is your idea for changing the FA Cup and trying to draw in more people to watch these games?
So the idea, much like March Madness and American college basketball, is to make it an event, a short few week event that I think will get everyone excited because it's the only thing, right? It's the only thing there. So from August to December, everything's exactly the same. You have the lower teams, National League teams, way down teams, 10th division teams, all trying to qualify to get into the FA Cup proper. And then the first Saturday of January-ish, sometimes it's the 8th, you get the third round of the FA Cup. I believe it's the third round, which is the first round that the top teams are in, the Premier League teams, and I think a couple championship teams. That is when the FA Cup field is at 64, which is exactly what March Madness is in college basketball. So now that first Saturday of January, so the Premier League can still have what they call their festive fixtures. You have your Boxing Day games, your New Year's Eve games, your New Year's Day games. All that's still the same. So the broadcast money for NBC and all the Sky Sports, whatever, you don't lose any of that. And now the first Saturday of January, you start the 64 team tournament of the FA Cup. You have, technically that Friday. So you would play Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Every team plays. So it's essentially all day, Saturday and Sunday. You'll get some night games, maybe Friday. Maybe you start a couple afternoon games that day because even though it's a work day. Yeah. And then the next week, I'll come back to something in a sec. And then the next week you'd play Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Okay.
And then the next weekend you'd play Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and that would be the round of 16.
And by you play, you don't mean each team plays every single day.
Correct. I mean, it's essentially a bracket. Right. So this would probably be the most controversial thing. Gone are the draws after each round. Right. So, each round they have a new draw. You see who you're playing. What you would essentially do is draw it all beforehand.
Right.
So you would say this team, this team, this team, this team, and then
the winner of this
game plays the winner of this game all the way through to the final.
Right.
So that you know exactly where you're going. So that first Friday, if you play, then you're going to play that Tuesday. You know exactly where you're going. You can make travel arrangements. You can do all those things. TV crews can get there, et cetera, et cetera. So no more draws. You just draw it all out front. It's still a draw. It's still random. It's still kind of fun to look at and see, what's our path? Oh, we got an easy path. Like, this is great. So it helps with that. So the first essentially week, 10 days from a Friday to the following Monday, you'd play 3 rounds of it. So you'd play the round of 64.
Okay.
You'd play the round of 32 and you play the round of 16. Now you've whittled it down to 8 teams.
Yeah.
And so then you wait the whole week. That next weekend, you would play Thursday, Friday, the round of 8.
Yeah.
And then Sunday, Monday. And so you would essentially get it down, or you could do, it doesn't really matter. Like you could do Saturday, Sunday, and then play the 2 final 4 games on a Wednesday, Thursday.
Right. So it's 2-2, then 1-1.
Exactly. And then the next weekend, you could go back to Premier League games because you've already whittled it down to 2.
Right.
So you go back to league games. What this does is you just essentially have a 2.5 to 3 week time span where the FA Cup is the thing to watch. You know what's coming next game. You can follow your team straight through on this journey, and it's all right there. It's all laid out before you. And I just think it would make it much more of a spectacle, much more of an event. And not only that, but the Premier League, all leagues basically have a transfer window in January.
Right.
So during this January transfer window, rather than playing just a ton of important league games, you can play cup games where you're trying to get players in. You don't have to worry about all that while you're playing league games. You're just playing cup games, and that matter. But I think to most teams, they don't matter as much as the league.
Right.
So you're still able to kind of do business on the side without having to worry about kind of cohesion and stuff for big league games.
Yeah. And the teams that make it far in the cup, especially the lower league teams, if they need to rest one of their star players or if one of their big players is injured, then they have time to recover during that January transfer window, which is nice.
Well, yes, but I think for the lower leagues, so like right now, most lower leagues later in the season, even on FA Cup Saturdays, they'll still schedule games, assuming not all their teams are still going to be in the FA Cup.
Right.
So I think you would continue that on if you're, say, League One. Like I think League One would schedule games in January, and just like they do later in the year, if one of their teams happens to be in the final 8, final 16, you would just push those games back to where later in the season you'll play a Wednesday game or whatever.
Right.
So I don't think it's a huge scheduling issue from their perspective at all. You just push those games back like you would any other time.
Yeah.
So I don't really see the downside here, except that the Premier League might not like getting pushed for 3 weeks.
Right.
But I think in the end it would be good.
It'd be good
soccer.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think it would be a lot of fun, be a really good spectacle. And I think if you're trying to get more, not that this is their goal, but if they're trying to get Americans to watch, I think that's like a great, because all Americans watch the World Cup. It's crazy.
There's a ton of Americans too.
So yeah, I think it's just a good thing to kind of draw different fan bases in and have a really fun 3-week long event. And again, you would play the Final Four that midweek near the end of January, but the final, still the last game of the season at Wembley after the Premier League's over, before the Champions League final. So you don't have to worry about that. That tradition's still alive.
Yeah, totally. And it would bring in tons of tourists.
Yeah.
Like so many, I mean, Americans would come over, but also people from other, like from European countries, from South American countries, like because it makes it more concentrated so that if you show up for one game of the FA Cup, you might be able to go to 2 or 3 of your team playing.
Exactly.
Rather than it being so spaced out that maybe you can plan a trip if you win this coming game.
Exactly.
And so like planning, that'd be really fun, because then you could also go see games that you wouldn't normally get to see.
Well, what I was going to say, the other thing is if they wanted to do this to cut down on travel, you could just take either 4 or 8 teams and concentrate them in a city. So you could have, Newcastle,
100%.
Liverpool, Manchester, Birmingham, London. And so you could just kind of take 8 teams and put them there. So fans can travel there. You're getting tourist money.
Yes.
They might get to see their team play 3 games in a week on a cup run. It's just, I think it should just really be a blast for fans, and not just tourist fans, but home fans as well. And, if you do have them in kind of neutral site cities, like, you get neutrals going and stuff like that. That's a lot of fun. Obviously you want the home atmosphere. I think that would be ideal to have the home atmospheres, but if they felt like that's too much travel, especially for lower league teams, you could either make the, higher team that's making more money pay for their travel, which is reasonable, I think, or you just concentrate it all in a couple cities.
I like it because, I mean, I've said this a million times on this show. Like March Madness is by far my favorite event besides maybe the World Cup. But the World Cup isn't even as concentrated as this. Like it's only the round games that are as concentrated.
Yeah. I mean, can you imagine that first Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you're playing 32 games over 3 days.
Yeah.
You've got a game starting at 10 a.m. English time, 11, 12. You just start a game basically every hour on Saturday and Sunday. And then Friday, you might start them at, 2 in the afternoon, 3 in the afternoon, to where guys can just take off, an afternoon and get to the game. So I think that first weekend, and then you go to the round of 32 midweek, and then the round of 16 the next weekend. Guys still getting 3 days rest minimum, which is great for the players. You don't have to play on 2 days rest. That was kind of the whole goal of it.
All right.
But it's just so many games in such a concentrated time that, you're having 4 screens on, 3 screens on, watching a ton of games. I think it would be an absolute blast. And Yeah, no, that's
I mean, another big selling point is that you'd be able to be drunk for like 3 days straight if you're watching these games. So for all you UK people, that'd be great for y'all.
I don't think they have a problem with that already. So
yeah, but that that'd just be fun to see that much football so many days in a row, epic games, like giant killings, like all sorts of stuff. Like it would be way more fun.
Big time. And you're coming off kind of the Christmas, New Year's period, and usually there's like a lull just culturally after that where everybody's like, okay, the excitement's over, like let's go back into the drudgery of our jobs. But now it's like, oh, we got this whole
big event,
we got this huge FA Cup event coming the next few weeks. Like what a great way to enter into the new year, and also like I said, be able to do business in the transfer window without necessarily having to like risk important league games, which could wait.
Yeah.
And also I think it ends up helping the league because especially the Premier League later in the year, they have to take Saturdays off to play FA Cup games. So now you're just pushing it into January, and now you can play 5-6 straight weeks later in the year. At the Premier League, you don't have to take a break for the FA Cup.
Right. Yeah. That was one thing that killed us last season. We ended up doing okay, but we ended up having 9 games in January. Because a few got rained out or snowed out or something, iced out maybe. Around that time in January. But I mean, we ended up, I think, winning 7 and losing 1 and drawing 1. So we did okay.
Yeah.
But that's exhausting. And people got injured during that time too.
Of course they did.
Yeah, because that's the way to get
Speaking of that, though, that was the other thing. A tradition of the FA Cup is the replay. In my system, I think the replay would have to go. The guys are playing so many games already. If we went to kind of a strict schedule, I think there'd be no more replays, which I hate. I do enjoy a good replay, but so many games are being played now. Like lower leagues, 46 games in a season plus cups. And they have an extra cup now with like the Check a Trade trophy or whatever it's called.
Whatever it's called.
Papa John's. I don't know.
It changes every year.
Yeah. So I think replays would have to go, which would suck, but I think it'd be better for everyone, and you'd still get on with the strict schedule, and you just go to penalty kicks, which everybody enjoys a good shootout.
Heck yeah! And at the very least, let's just get rid of the word replay because it's idiotic. Because if you're watching a replay, that doesn't mean you're watching another game. It's a rematch, people. You call it a match. Let's call it a rematch. Like it makes no sense to call it a replay.
Fair point. I do enjoy kind of the weird terms that they throw in. Like a tie isn't a tie. A tie is a matchup.
Right.
and stuff like that. I do enjoy the British lingo.
Sometimes British lingo drives me nuts, but I'm sure American lingo drives them nuts too.
Yeah.
Australian lingo is bizarre for all you Australians out there.
True.
All right. Well, I'm a huge fan of this. I think they'll definitely adopt this if they see this podcast, without a doubt.
Yeah. So tweet it out there. Get it.
Tweet it.
The head of the FA.
There you go. I think we'll make some clips of this and send it and try to push it and tag them. So if you think this is a good idea, go. I don't know. Spread this podcast around. Yeah, spread it across the UK, far and wide. All right, we're almost out of time, but before we go, when do you think Wrexham will be playing West Ham? What year?
Not cup wise. We're talking in
the league.
I mean, we could easily get relegated twice over the next 3 years. I say we stay in the Premier League and we'll see Wrexham in a league match. I think it's going to get harder. I think the Championship is the hardest league to get out of. I'm going to say the year is 2032. Okay,
so we've got 9 years to make it up. That's not crazy.
That would be an epic run through the leagues. I think y'all should be happy with that.
Yeah, it's not crazy.
Before 2040, I would think that y'all should be ecstatic. It's hard to win.
Yeah.
Like you can pay for as much as you want. It is just brutal to try to win soccer games.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. Now that I think about it, man, I'm still learning about the history of Wrexham's team. There's just so much of it that I'm not even sure we've made it to the Premier League before. I think we're in the Championship is the highest we've
That
gotten.
makes sense.
And so, yeah, the idea of making it to the Premier League, people seem to think. Also, what are your thoughts on? We just get tons and tons of hate because Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney bought the team, and now we have an influx of cash, and they're saying we're doing it unnaturally, going up through the leagues. What are your thoughts on all that?
My only issue would be if they're doing it in an unsustainable way, where if they don't get promoted a couple years or get relegated, the team goes into administration, goes bankrupt. That would be my only issue. If the books are good and they're making good investments and they're making money and the club is making money and it's sustainable, that's great. That's my only issue is because you see owners come in and buy teams that just spend a ton of money and they don't get promoted like they hope, and so the money runs out and the team ends up going into administration and struggling. So that's the only thing I'd say. I don't care how you do it as long as you're not putting the team and the community at risk while doing it.
Right. Yeah, and they've mentioned a couple times that if they didn't get promoted last season, they'd be in the red and they'd have a bunch of problems. I have a hard time actually believing that is 100% the truth, considering the advertisers, the sponsors, all of the attention we get, I guarantee you, we get so much supplemental income from all these other revenue streams.
Not only that, but if they do start struggling for money, like to think Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney can't go out and find a rich friend and just be like, hey, invest in the team.
Right.
Of course they could. They could find probably 300 people who will throw, 10, 20 mil at the team. So it's not, I don't think that's an issue for Wrexham. Nice. But I just, again, I hope that I want these communities to have like teams that they're proud of, and even if they're not getting promoted and doing amazingly, that they're still a source of pride in the community, and I don't want them, losing money and going bankrupt. So
and that they've made that very clear that the community comes first. So they've done a good job with that so far, I think. So, well, that'll do it. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. This was the blast. I'll do it again anytime.
Heck yeah. Well, whenever we're together, or you have a better setup when you're not looking at 8 screens at once. And
we'll do one at March Madness.
There we go.
We'll look at the bracket and we'll imagine it with English soccer team.
Yes, actually, that's a really good idea. We'll show what a March Madness weekend is like, what the first weekend is in March Madness. Maybe get because FA Cup will still be happening at that point. So we'll do another FA Cup follow-up.
That'd be cool.
All right. That'll do it. Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, man.
So there you have it. That was my brother talking about the FA Cup and the improvements that could possibly be made. I really love a lot of the ideas. I think they would add a whole lot of value and interest in the FA Cup, especially outside of the UK. I think that it would allow more people to come and visit during those 3 weeks that he proposed. I just think it would be a fantastic idea. So if you're out there and you have any influence over these things, just take some notes. Just take some notes, maybe run it by some people who make those kinds of decisions, because I know traditions aren't easily changed, but this could be an interesting one. So I would love to see that in the future. If it'll actually happen, who knows? But it's fun to not pontificate. It's fun to just muse about what might be and what we want to happen. So there it is. Click that like button. Drop a like on the video. Share it with your friends. Go follow me on Instagram and Twitter. And and next week is the year-end wrap-up. It is a look back on the past year of Wrexham, the past 6 months of this podcast. It is just an end cap on 2023, which is, it'll be December 30th, 31st, whatever next week is. 31st. Yeah, 31st. So it is literally the day before 2024. So come back next week. 12 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. GMT for some more Wrexham Texan. Thank y'all so much for watching Up the Town.
Search my soul with all your heart, you're gonna see it. You're gonna see it. And if you knock my soul with all your strength, you're gonna find it. You're gonna find it.